Dublin, the capital city of Southern Ireland and the home of its government, is the largest city in Ireland. Dublin, by virtue of its size, stands out dramatically in what is a largely rural country. Almost 1 million people live in Dublin. This doesn't sound a lot until you consider it's almost 1/3 of the entire population. Situated in Dublin Bay, next to the Irish Sea, this beautiful city has many sights to offer the visitor, sights both modern and historical. This contradiction of the old and the new is what's most endearing about Dublin. It was the mixing of the peat-coloured waters of the River Poddle and the River Liffey, the river which flows through the centre of Dublin, that gave rise to its name. But the original Celtic name for Dublin, and still its official name, was Béal Atacliath, which means Town of the Hurdle Ford, a small river crossing that still exists today. Dublin itself is a very old place. In ancient times, the Greek philosopher Ptolemy mentioned Dublin when it was called Eblana. Then the area was settled by Christian Celts in and around monastic settlements. The Vikings arrived around 840 AD and used Dublin as a base for their expeditions and raids. It is then that the city began its rise to a prosperous port, trading with the rest of Europe. In 1169, Dermot MacMurrough, the King of Leinster, asked Henry II of England for his help. He needed help to get rid of the Vikings in order to reinforce his kingship of Ireland. The Anglo-Norman army invaded and soon wiped out the Viking threat. The problem was that they were so successful in doing this that they didn't want to leave. It would be 700 years before they left. The Anglo-Normans fortified themselves with strong castles, such as Dublin Castle. Most of the castle was destroyed by fire in 1684, but parts of it date back to the original Norman castle of 1202. Since the fire of 1684, the castle has had numerous buildings added to it. Throughout its history, the castle has been used for a variety of purposes. The British Viceroy's apartments, a prison, the Irish crown jewels were even held here. They were held in Bedford Tower until they were stolen from here in 1907. Today, Dublin is a colorful, musical, and modern city. Elegant architecture, smart restaurants, fashionable shops, and a huge variety of pubs exist side by side with grand and historic buildings. Walking down a Dublin street could just as easily lead you to the hustle and bustle of the busy city life, or a quiet little square with just the birds for company. Dublin has many Georgian streets and buildings. These were built during the boom years of the 18th century, and they rival the best Georgian architecture that Scotland or England can offer. By the standards at that time, Dublin was a huge place, with only the city of London being any bigger. The planning and building of the Georgian Dublin was orchestrated by a commission set up in 1757. This was called the Commission for Making Wide and Convenient Streets. They probably would have made them a little wider if they could have foreseen the arrival of buses and trucks. It's easy to see why many figures of literature have been inspired by the busy streets of Dublin. All around the city are reminders of the great writers that were born or lived there. Bernard Shaw, W.B. Yeats, Samuel Beckett, Jonathan Swift, James Joyce, and Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde was born in Westland Row and graduated from nearby Trinity College a few years behind Bram Stoker, the author of Dracula. Indeed, the list of graduates from the college is mightily impressive. Founded by Elizabeth I in 1592, the students who have walked through the 2 million volumes that are stored in the Long Room include Oliver Goldsmith, Samuel Beckett, and Jonathan Swift. Jonathan Swift is best remembered for writing Gulliver's Travels. He was the dean of St. Patrick's Cathedral, and it was probably in the deanery that he completed Gulliver's Travels. Jonathan Swift lies buried in this great and imposing cathedral. St. Patrick's Cathedral is the national cathedral and the largest church in Ireland. It stands on one of the oldest Christian sites in Ireland, believed to date back to the 5th century, and St. Patrick himself is said to have blessed converts at a well within the grounds. The current building dates back to the 12th century and was restored in 1864 after surviving storms, 2 fires, and the indignity of being converted to a stable by Cromwell in 1649. Another piece of Irish inheritance is, of course, the pubs. And nowhere in Ireland will you find more pubs than in Dublin. Even great historical figures spent a lot of their time in Dublin pubs. Figures such as James Joyce, who immortalized Dublin in Ulysses, and Patrick Kavanagh could be found frequenting the many pubs of Dublin. The pubs of today are the same as they were in those days, lively, noisy, and musical. The quality of music you will find in most Irish pubs is truly outstanding. You don't have to go far to hear traditional Irish songs being played with all the passion and feeling that was originally intended when they were first written all those years ago. Part of this important inheritance is, of course, what is drunk in these pubs, clearly shown by this typical Irish saying.
Sláinte. In Ireland, there's an old Irish expression, can steal another man's wife, never water his whiskey.
However, the most famous drink of them all is, of course, stout, in particular, Guinness. Stout is a beer, which is dark in color because the barley from which it is made is roasted. This technique was brought to Ireland by the Cork brewers Beamish and Crawford. Guinness has since become synonymous with this dark brew throughout the world, although Murphy's and Beamish can also be found in many Irish pubs. The Guinness Brewery was founded by Arthur Guinness in 1759 at St. James Gate on the River Liffey. It grew quickly in popularity, with the first export orders leaving the brewery in 1769. And by the early 19th century, the dark brew was on sale all over the world. The Guinness Brewery is still the world's largest stout brewery, producing over 2.5 million pints per day. Still using the same strain of yeast originally selected by Arthur Guinness all those years ago. The recipe has always remained the same: Irish-grown barley, soft water, hops, and yeast. Water from the River Liffey was once a vital ingredient in Guinness, but you will be relieved to know that this is no longer the case. Today, visitors can take a tour around the brewery, sampling the sights, sounds, smells, and taste of one of the most famous and well-known brands in the world, even appearing in literary classics such as Alice in Wonderland. "What are the lion and the unicorn fighting for?" asked Alice. "They both want a Guinness," said the king, "and there's only one left." "Does the one that wins get the Guinness?" asked Alice. "Dear me, no," said the king. "The one that had the Guinness wins." Like many of the great cities of the world, Dublin is built upon a river. The River Liffey flows down to Dublin from the Wicklow Hills, passing the huge Phoenix Park and flowing under 14 city bridges before reaching Dublin Harbour and Dublin Bay. For much of its length, the Liffey is like a small country stream, even through Phoenix Park, before opening up as it gets nearer to the city centre. There have been bridges over the River Liffey for over 800 years. The oldest of these, still standing, is the Liam Mellows Bridge, which was originally built in 1768. The River Poddle, or the Black Pool, which gives the city of Dublin its name, runs mainly underground, trickling into the River Liffey through a grating just south of the bridge. Despite the Black Pool flowing into the Liffey, you can often see many fish swimming about in the waters below. The best views of the river in the city are from O'Connell Bridge, or the Halfpenny Bridge. The Halfpenny Bridge, or rather the Halfpenny Bridge, is the only pedestrian bridge in Dublin. It was built in 1816, and it leads the visitor to the exciting Temple Bar area of town. It's one of the earliest cast iron structures of its kind in Ireland. Officially called the Liffey Bridge, it became known as the Halfpenny Bridge after the toll charged to all its users. The other route is over the humpback O'Connell Bridge, opened to traffic in 1880. At that time, it was lit by gas lamps, with horse trams pulling huge groups of visitors across the bridge. Nowadays, huge groups of visitors still travel across the very busy O'Connell Bridge. One of the most exciting parts of Dublin is the area known as Temple Bar. In the 17th century, it was named Temple Bar after a previous owner, Sir William Temple. a one-time thriving business district, is now a vibrant, pedestrianized place. The district started to really grow and develop in the 1980s. The narrow and cobbled alleyways are still here, but now it is also the home of cafes, ethnic restaurants, jazz, folk music, and even classical music. The music plays late into the night. All tastes are catered for. Whether you're exploring the many restaurants or listening out for the latest sounds that filter through the streets of this very unconventional and bohemian quarter of Dublin. Kilmainham Jail is an important centre of Irish history. It was opened in 1796, shortly before the Act of the Union abolished the Irish Parliament. It was finally closed in 1924, when Ireland became a free state. The opening and closing of this jail more or less coincided with the making and breaking of the union between Great Britain and Ireland. During those intervening years, the jail was like a political barometer. The uprisings of 1799, 1803, 1848, 1867, and 1916 all saw its leaders imprisoned at some time or other in Kilmainham Jail. Now the jail is empty of prisoners, but it remains filled with history. It has often been called the Irish Bastille because, like its French counterpart, it became such an important symbol of the Revolution. Walking through this vast building, the largest unoccupied jail in Europe, it is easy to feel the presence of prisoners long dead. Prisons then were, of course, very different to those today. If the prisoner or his family were rich, they could afford several rooms, fully furnished, and all the food and drink he could want. He could even move his family in with him. If the prisoner were poor, then he would end up living in squalor on the brink of starvation. The prisoners were even allowed to beg in the streets to contribute towards their keep. Within the walls, male, female, and child offenders mixed freely. The law made no distinction between children and adults. Taking a tour around the jail is a memorable experience, touching the lives of the many people that created modern Irish history. Kilmainham Jail offers a unique and profound insight into some of the aspects that help shape the modern Ireland. Situated in the west of Dublin is Phoenix Park. The name Phoenix Park is actually a corruption of the Irish words for clear water, fiannes. It is one of the world's largest parks. Covering over 700 acres, it dwarfs Central Park in New York and all the parks in London. There are gardens, lakes, a zoo, and even a dueling place. An area of the park known as the 15 Acres was well known in the 18th century for a place that gentlemen could go and carry out their duels. This area of land is now used as playing fields. Instead of the sound of musket and swords, it is now the sound of children's laughter that sounds in the trees. It is ironic and typical of Ireland that even playing fields are not without their very own history. Another part in Dublin is St. Stephen's Green. As it is situated in the middle of Dublin, it's a very popular place for office workers to enjoy their lunch breaks. The park is entered by walking under Fusilier's Arch. A copy of the Arch of Titus in Rome, it was erected to commemorate Irish soldiers who fought in the 1899 Boer War. St. Stephen's Park was the center of fashion in the 18th century, but then became a private park with people being charged 1 guinea to enter. A short time later, Sir Arthur Edward Guinness rushed through an Act of Parliament which once again made St. Stephen's Green a public place. The gardens were laid out and paid for by Sir Arthur Edward Guinness himself in 1880. There are flower gardens, ornamental lakes, and waterfowl within its 9 acres of grounds. Music drifts through the statues and trees from the round bandstands that play with lunchtime concerts. Adjoining this beautiful park is the St. Stephen's Green Shopping Mall, a huge structure. It's like walking through an old greenhouse filled with all kinds of shops and restaurants. An equally impressive but considerably older building is Custom House. Situated downstream from O'Connell Bridge, this magnificent building was built between 1781 and 1791 by the architect James Gandon. Built on marshy ground, Custom House floats on a fragile platform of wooden planks alongside the River Liffey. During the Battle for Independence in 1921, the building was almost destroyed by fire. It is only recently that it has been restored to its former glory. On the opposite side of the river is the Irish Museum of Modern Art. It was once the Royal Hospital. Commissioned by Charles II, it was designed by William Robinson in 1684. Charles II wanted it to be on a grand scale, classical, yet continental in style. No expense was spared. He wanted a home for his pensioner soldiers, but equally wanted a building that would mark the starting of Dublin's rise into a city of European standing. Like so much of Dublin, this building symbolizes what Dublin was in the past, what it is today, and what it wants to be in the future. A city with energy and ambition. Dublin has once again become a great European city, a busy modern place, with its colorful history never far away. In the southwest corner of Ireland, spread along a series of rugged peninsulas, is the county of Kerry. Wild and sea-swept, Kerry is a rugged and spectacular county. Kerry is also steeped in history, ancient history. Trailed along the roughened peninsula edges are ancient forts, high crosses, and other monuments giving the county an aura of medieval magic and mystique. Some of the ruins in Kerry go back to before the birth of Christ. Kerry is made up of three main peninsulas: the Dingle Peninsula, the Iveragh Peninsula, and the Beara Peninsula. Dingle and the Iveragh Peninsulas are two of the most beautiful and popular places in the whole of Ireland. Kerry has one of the mildest climates in Ireland. Lots of summer sunshine and deep blue sea bays ensure that Kerry is one of the most popular places for vacations. Situated in the gateway to the Dingle Peninsula is the town of Tralee. Almost 800 years old, this ancient city is the capital of County Kerry. The town has long been a rebellious one. In the 16th century, the last ruling Earl of the Desmonds was captured and executed. His head was sent to Elizabeth I, who had it displayed on London Bridge. There are subtle remnants of British rule here, such as the post boxes, which, instead of being painted bright red as in Britain, are painted bright green of Ireland. Quaint little pubs and restaurants lie scattered about the busy streets of Tralee. Tralee's most popular attraction, though, is the steam railway. The Tralee Steam Railway is one of Kerry's best-known features. It was once one of the world's most famous narrow-gauge railways running between Tralee and Dingle. The service started in 1891, but always had trouble paying its way. And 60 years later, in 1953, it was closed. However, in 1993, a section of the railway was reopened, that section being between Tralee and Blannerville, a 20-minute train ride. The steam train is powered by loco number 5, the last surviving Tralee and Dingle engine. It has spent the last few years in the Steamtown Railway Museum in Vermont, but has been brought back to Ireland to run on the Tralee line. The carriages are not original, but are fitted out in the traditional style. Visitors to Tralee can enjoy the journey from Tralee to the other end of the line at Blannerville Windmill. Blannerville Windmill is an impressive and picturesque windmill that was built in the 18th century by Sir Rowland Blennerhassett, a wealthy merchant. The windmill has recently been restored to its former glory and is now the largest working windmill in Ireland. The mill produces stone-ground flour from local wheat. The huge sails drive the slow, methodical machinery hidden within the windmill. The slow whirring and clicking of the wheels mingle with the sound of the sails as they are spun slowly around by the gentle breeze. The wheat is poured onto the mill stone, and the freshly ground flour falls down the chute into the waiting sacks. This flour is made in exactly the same way as it was over 200 years ago. This well-known local saying, the American line, comes from the time when Blannerville was an emigration point during the Great Famine of 1845-1848.
Anybody going in the American line be down at the windmill in 10 minutes' time. Some people laughing and some people crying. That was the way till end of time.
Sailing ships left from here transporting thousands of Irish immigrants from Blannerville to destinations such as Britain, Canada, and the United States. One such ship was the Jeanie Johnston. This was one of the most famous vessels used to transport emigrants. During its vast number of journeys, it never once lost a passenger. This was an amazing statistic when you consider that the emigrant ships at that time were nicknamed the coffin ships. An eyewitness account at the time summed up the fear that these passengers felt boarding the emigrant ships bound for faraway places. It's impossible to describe the final parting. Shrieks and prayers, blessings and lamentations mingled in one great cry from those on the quay and those on the shipboard, until a band stationed in the forecastle struck up St. Patrick's Day. "Beat the brains out of the big drum or you'll not stifle the women's cries," said one of the sailors to the drummer. The communicating plank was withdrawn, and the ship moved forward majestically on its way. Some, overcome with emotion, fell down on the deck. Others waved handkerchiefs and hands to their friends. The band played louder, and the crowds on the shore rushed forward simultaneously, determined to see the last of those that they loved.
Come on, it's all right, I don't mind. Come on, come on.
Moving westwards from Tralee along the jagged coastline of the Dingle Peninsula, you reach Dingle, the peninsula's main town. This gale-tacked Irish-speaking town has much to offer in the way of stunning scenery and stately mountains sloping down to peaceful beaches. The quiet golden sands merge gently with the tranquil blue waters of Dingle Bay. The town of Dingle is quite a classy tourist town, with excellent shops and wonderful restaurants. One of Dingle's more unusual places is Dick Mack's. Dick Mack's is a wonderfully eccentric place, with one side of the shop being a very traditional shoemaker's. However, things are not quite what they seem. On the other side of the shoe shop is a pub. Somehow, I suspect that this is the more profitable side of the business. Only in Ireland could you find a shoe shop that is also a pub. The town of Dingle is surrounded by beautiful countryside. Like most of Ireland, you don't have to travel far away from the towns before you reach more traditional villages and farms. All over the county of Kerry are many ancient sites, churches, prehistoric standing stones, and curious old ruins. Cycling or walking through Kerry is a good way to find many of the sites. Some are very small and difficult to find, leading to a feeling of discovery when you stumble upon something, wondering how many other people have discovered this. Dotted about the hillsides in this area are many strange little stone huts. These are known as clochans, or beehive huts. These beehive huts are actually medieval stone dwellings. Some are in better condition than others. None, however, are in better condition than the Gallerus Oratory. Simple yet very impressive, this structure is in perfect condition, despite being 1,200 years old. Dingle Harbor is a natural haven, offering protection and shelter from Atlantic storms. Long ago, this natural haven gave rise to a thriving smuggling industry. Today, visitors can take boat journeys all around the Kerry coastline, where, if you look hard, you may see some of the caves that may have been used long ago for smuggled goods. Dingle is favored not only by human visitors, but indeed by other mammals, or at least one other mammal. Fungi, the wandering dolphin, has long since established Dingle Bay as his home. A bottle-nosed dolphin, Fungi seems to have become separated from his original group and arrived in Dingle Bay alone. Since his arrival, he's become a celebrity. He enjoys human company, joining any nearby swimmer. There are boat trips from Dingle so that tourists can get a glimpse of Fungi, who will always leap out of the water to greet the occupants of the boats. South of the Dingle Peninsula is the Iveragh Peninsula, otherwise known as the Ring of Kerry. This is probably the most popular tourist route in Ireland. The Ring of Kerry is a route that takes the traveller along the dramatic coastline of this peninsula. One of the sights that is seen by anyone who takes the Ring of Kerry journey is the Skellig Islands. George Bernard Shaw said of the Skellig Islands, "I tell you that thing does not belong to any world that you or I have lived and worked in. It is part of our dream world." A boat trip to the islands confirms the truth of Shaw's comment. The largest of the two islands is Skellig Michael. This 700-foot high jagged rock looks like the last place on earth where anyone would want to live. Yet Christian monks thought otherwise and settled here in the 7th century and survived there until the 13th century. The journey around the Ring of Kerry will also take you through the stunning Killarney National Park. The grandeur of this wilderness is breathtaking. Traveling on the roads that wind through woods, heather, mountains, and moors, it's impossible not to be reminded just what a beautiful place Ireland is. Nowhere is this reminder stronger than in one's first experience of Ladies' View. It's named after Queen Victoria and her ladies of waiting, who were also mesmerized by the very same view that mesmerizes us today. The park is a haven of lush foliage and expansive lakes. The lakes of Killarney are an incredible sight. It really is possible to sit on the shores of the lakes and forget the stresses and strains of modern life. A gentle walk, a boat trip, and by horseback are the only ways to travel through a landscape as gorgeous as this. The island-strewn peninsulas that trail westwards to the Atlantic are what make Kerry so special, along with the ever-present cool blue sea and the lush emerald wilderness. The pace of life is slow and gentle. County Kerry is a timeless place, a place where you feel that all this is never going to change, that this is the way it'll be years from now, the way it ought to be. The county of Donegal is the northernmost part of Ireland, even though it still remains part of southern Ireland. It boasts some of Ireland's most spectacular scenery: windswept glacial valleys, beautiful coastlines, and the highest cliffs in Europe. Donegal is the most remote place in Ireland, and this is what makes it so attractive. It's a place of mountains, lakes, and moors, a county unspoilt by the modern world, where wild scenery surrounds deep lochs and the cleanest air in Europe fills the senses. Visitors to Donegal can truly get away from it all. It really is possible to travel for miles without seeing another soul. There are towns in Donegal, but by modern standards they are very small, but nonetheless utterly charming. The largest and most often visited of these towns is Donegal. The original Celtic name for Donegal is Donegal, which means the fort of the foreigners. This refers to the occupation of Ireland by the Vikings. The town of Donegal is a thriving market town located in Donegal Bay. It is situated on the River Esk, only a few miles from the traditional Irish region called the Gaeltacht. In the center of Donegal, there is the Diamond Obelisk. This monument commemorates the founding of Donegal Abbey in 1474, and in particular, the Four Masters. The Four Masters were four Franciscan monks who wrote the definitive history of Celtic culture in a book called The Annals of the Four Masters. It chronicles the entire history from 40 years before the flood until 1618 AD. Unfortunately, the abbey was accidentally blown up in 1601 while the book was still being written, but the Annals of the Four Masters survived and was finished elsewhere. Donegal is world-renowned for its hand-woven tweed, and only a stone's throw from the Diamond Obelisk is McGee's. McGee's of Donegal is still run by the same family who established it in 1866. In the late 19th century, wooden looms were used to make the hand-woven Donegal tweed. They still produce tweed in the old-fashioned way, hand-woven, as they have done for the last 125 years. McGee's is the only company in Donegal which is still weaving and tailoring hand-woven tweed. The fabrics are blended into yarn and then woven into cloth. As you can see, it's hard work, requiring a good eye and lots of coordination to work all the petals in the shuttle, which zooms across the strands carrying its thread. On top of all that skill is the patience of the weaver, who would have to sit there for many hours during each day producing this exceptional cloth. Nowadays, McGee's are equally famous for their other luxury fabrics such as mohair, cashmere, and lamb's wool. The cloth itself is made by a workforce of over 600 people. This cloth is of the highest quality and is appreciated by such prestigious designers as Ralph Lauren and Armani. All the fabrics are produced under the McGee label for export all over the world, whether they are modern colors and styles or the more traditional tweed in the colors of the Donegal landscape itself. The cloth seems to encapsulate the essence of Ireland, with patterns and colors inspired by the landscapes of Donegal. In the northeast of the county of Donegal lies Killarney National Park. 10,000 acres of wild moors, woodland and valleys surrounding the tranquil quiet of Loch Bow. Killarney Castle stands beside Loch Bow. This fairy tale castle was created by John George Adair, who bought the land in 1857 and built the castle around 1870. The castle was once owned by the American art historian Arthur Kingsley Porter, a specialist in medieval sculpture. One day, he set off in his fishing boat, never to be seen again. His boat was found, but there was no sign of the occupant. Gossip said that he faked his own death in order to get away from his unhappy domestic life. Killarney National Park is made up of glacial valleys that carve their way through grouse moors and blanket bog. There are glens and mountains to be explored along the shoreline of Loch Bow. The park is open all year, so visitors can enjoy the wild beauty of the park in any of the 4 seasons. The park is wooded with imported rhododendron and spruce, mixed with the more native flora such as oak and birch trees. Visitors flock to the park in the summer, but with the size of Killarney, it's always possible to find spots for quiet walks and picnics. Not far away from Killarney is Glebe House. Glebe House stands only a short walk from the shores of Loch Garten. This Georgian building dates from 1828, when it was originally a rectory. Today it's a very popular destination for visitors to Donegal. Glebe House was bought in 1953 by the artist Derek Hill, who lived there for 30 years. Initially from England, he traveled the world where he developed a taste in Oriental and Islamic art. He furnished the house with style and taste, using a mixture of styles from all over the world, such as Oriental and Middle Eastern tapestries and hangings. A lot of the textiles and wallpapers are original William Morris, who was one of the most famous designers of the Victorian era. All around the unusually furnished house are many examples of Irish art from around that period. The kitchen has a delightful folk style and is full of paintings by the Tory Island artists. During his life in Ireland, Derek Hill visited Tory Island. This island is about 5 miles off the coast of Donegal. Derek Hill arrived there in 1956 to paint landscapes, and pretty soon he had inspired the islanders to paint. The most famous of all the Tory Island painters was James Dixon, who did not even pick up a brush until he was in his 60s. In addition to the art of Donegal, there are many examples of other great artists, such as Picasso, Bonnard, Renoir, and other leading 19th and 20th century artists. These are housed in the very modern art gallery built alongside the house. Set in landscaped gardens, the house was given to the nation in 1980 by Derek Hill. With a place so remote as Donegal, it is not surprising that the traditional way of life still exists in large areas of this county. Lots of small communities lie dotted around the county, whether they are villages made up of a number of houses or just one small cottage that nestles in the countryside on its own. Donegal is the third largest county in Ireland, after Cork and Galway, but has the largest Gael tact. The Gael tact is a name for the officially recognized Irish-speaking area. The Irish government actually pay grants to encourage local people to remain in the Gael tact. Here you can walk into a shop or a bar and overhear true Irish being spoken, the oldest Aryan language of all. It's a strange language. Soft tones mix with harsher, more throaty sounds. The people here are tremendously proud of their heritage, as being a place that the British could never quite conquer, with the wilder regions never once falling under British rule. Despite once being part of Northern Ireland, the British chose to let Donegal stay with the Republic. Today, the people of Donegal welcome strangers with open arms. They're well used to being observed going about their daily life by groups of curious visitors, keen to learn more about the traditional way of life. Whether it be working on the farm or fixing their thatched cottage roofs, the people of Donegal are always keen to talk and need no excuse to strike up conversations with strangers. Just outside Donegal are the Marble Arch Caves. These caves are open to visitors during the summer months and offer a spectacular subterranean journey through the caves. Spectacular rock formations of all shapes, sizes, and colors fill the vast caverns. Running through this huge complex of caves is a large subterranean river. Visitors begin the exploration of the caves by journeying along this river by boat. Along the way, some of the most spectacular rock formations in the whole of Ireland can be seen. The section of land between Dunglow and Tralee is known as the Rosses, which means the headland. The Guibara Bridge marks the beginning of the Rosses, which is, in fact, a series of islands scattered around a broken and rocky coast. To many, this represents the real Donegal. Surrounded by 130 freshwater lakes and seemingly endless mountains, it seems a world away from modern life. This is Donegal at its most wild and beautiful. The next peninsula north of the Rosses is Gweedore. The most scenic area of Gweedore is an area of land called the Bloody Foreland. Rather like the Rosses, the Bloody Foreland is a wonderfully remote headland. The Bloody Foreland is a mass of red granite. The cliffs at the foreland get their name from the red tinge which the rocky coast takes on during sunset. The sea is then bathed in the same red, and Tory Island nearby becomes a glowing pearl on the scarlet sea. County Donegal, more than anywhere else in Ireland, is a place of stark beauty, a remote place of bleakness and dramatic scenery. Donegal is the perfect place for anyone exploring Ireland that seeks a private rendezvous with this peaceful wilderness. Here in these far-flung reaches, you will find a rural ideal, a true picture postcard of an old Ireland that any visitor will keep with them and treasure forever. The southwestern counties are said to be especially rich in all that Ireland is famed for: the wild beauty of the land, deep sea bays framed by rugged coastlines, and, of course, the warm, charismatic Irish people. County Cork, situated on the southern coast of Ireland, offers these qualities in abundance. Cork City, the capital of County Cork, is now one of Ireland's major cities, second only to Dublin. In the secluded Gugan Forest Park, from a lake filled by mountain streams flows the River Lee. From there it winds its way through the county of Cork to the coast, passing through Cork City on its way. The spreading Lee that like an island fair encloseth Cork with his divided flood, were the words used by Edmund Spenser to describe Cork City. Like Venice, it's built on water, with the city centre perched on an island. The River Lee divides it in two as it passes on either side of the island to reunite beyond it. Built on reclaimed marshes, the name Cork is derived from the Irish cuoca, meaning marshy place. The city actually dates back to the 7th century and is said to have grown from a monastic settlement founded by St. Finbar, a religious figure whose religious establishments contained at least 700 priests, monks, and students. Cork still pays tribute to its founder, and today people can visit St. Finbar's Cathedral. Built of pale grey limestone, this stately cathedral lies on the original site of St. Finbar's monastic settlement. Spirited and fiercely independent, it's hardly surprising that many of Cork's leading political figures have been associated with Ireland's struggle for independence. One of Ireland's great heroes, Michael Collins, was born and died in West Cork. He was one of the leaders who helped win the battle for independence. However, a more moderate figure in Cork's history was Father Theobald Matthew, who formed the Cork Total Abstinence Society. Within 2 years of forming the society, he had persuaded thousands of people to abstain from drinking alcohol. And I think you'll agree that this was quite an achievement when you consider just how much the Irish liked to enjoy themselves. St. Anne's Shandon is one of the city's best-known landmarks. You can sometimes hear the chimes of the church bells as they echo about the bridges and quays of the city. Built in 1722, St. Anne's Shandon stands on the original site of a medieval church. A castle was also situated next to the church, but both were almost entirely devastated during the struggles between William III and James II. St. Anne's was built on the site of the old church using materials from it. The name Shandon means old fort. A dome rests on the tower, upon which is a weather vane in the form of a salmon. Measuring 11 feet, this is to herald the salmon industry on the River Lee, which flows through Cork. The salmon fishing industry is of such vital importance to Cork, it's hardly surprising that it should be honoured in this way. The fishing boats dotted about the picturesque harbour remind us that Cork is still a thriving fishing community. Another piece of heritage is the Cork Examiner. Locally, it is simply referred to as the paper, but is in fact a fine piece of journalism and has been printed every day without fail since August 1841, over 150 years. The Evening Echo has had a shorter but still impressive reign, having been in production for 100 years. A statue known as the Echo Boy commemorates this. It depicts a young boy selling newspapers, calling through the dusk to passers-by to buy a copy. The town of Cork also possesses an important harbour. The harbour has a strong connection with Atlantic journeys. The very first crossing of the Atlantic by steamship left there in 1838. Looking at Cork Harbour today, it is difficult to reconcile it to its poignant history, for it was here that many of the coffin ships departed for the new world of the Americas. They were called the coffin ships because for thousands of emigrants, Cork Harbour would probably be their last sight of Ireland. The harbour was also the last stop made by the Titanic before its ill-fated journey. Another port and major town is the historic walled port of Youghal. Situated on the Blackwater estuary, Youghal developed along the river where water was readily available, and the settlement could be easily defended. Like most of Ireland, Youghal suffered from both Viking raids and later invasion by the Normans. However, by 1350 the town was a walled port, trading with ports all over Europe. Wine, salt and spices were imported, while wool, fish, timber and agricultural produce were exported. Today, fresh fish is still readily available, and the sight of fishermen working on the quays is not uncommon. Many outstanding restaurants are based in Cork, most specializing in the seafood that is caught just offshore. Much of the fish is from the bay and Blackwater estuary. Similarly renowned is the pub Moby Dick's. The film director John Huston chose Youghal to film his 1954 film Moby Dick, starring Gregory Peck. The pub was said to be a favorite of the director's while he was filming, dropping by occasionally for a pint. Probably Youghall's best-known historical figure is Walter Raleigh, who from 1588 to 1589 was mayor of the town. Raleigh's estates were eventually bought by Sir Richard Boyle for the princely sum of £1,500. Boyle was subsequently made Earl of Cork in 1620, and a figure representing Richard Boyle can be seen in the church at Youghal. Figures of both of his wives are placed on either side of him. It was, in fact, his first wife, Joan Hapsley, whose wealth enabled him to purchase and develop Raleigh's estates. Several of his 15 children are also shown in the monument. Those lying down died at birth. This monument is situated in St. Mary's Church of Ireland, a stately building with its weathered walls covered in moss. This was originally a Danish church. However, extensive damage in 1220 caused much of the old church to be destroyed, and a new one was built incorporating elements of the old church. Nonetheless, it remains one of the oldest churches still in use in Ireland. Youghall's ancient wall is an object of interest to many visitors to Cork. One of the gates in the wall, the Trinity Gate, which is at the western end of the wall, was replaced with the clock tower which still stands in Youghal today. Built in 1777, the clock tower was used as a prison until the mid-19th century, but soon proved itself to be too small. An extra story was added in 1795, and during the Rising of 1798, several members of the United Irish were hung from the windows of the tower. The clock bell in the tower was used as an alarm throughout the centuries, and as a fire bell up until the 1950s. The little town of Kinsale is a very popular destination in Cork. A picture postcard village of Ireland, Kinsale is a very small but very seductive place. Like the rest of Cork, the sea plays an important part in the history of Kinsale. All around the village are reminders of the events of 1601. In 1601, the British had besieged a Spanish fleet anchored in the harbour nearby. The Irish army travelled the whole length of the country in order to attack the British, but they were defeated. As a result, Irish Catholics were banned from the village of Kinsale for over 100 years. A place of equal history, but considerably more fame than anywhere else in Cork, is Blarney Castle. Dating back to the 15th century, for the first 200 years of its life, Blarney would have experienced all the triumph and glory of war as any castle in Ireland. Standing by the castle's roughened walls today, there is still a sense of majesty and magic. Perhaps more so, because this is the home of the famous Blarney Stone. Legend tells us that anyone that kisses the Blarney Stone gains the gift of eloquence. The origin of this has been lost in time, but the development of the word Blarney can be traced to Elizabethan times. It was Queen Elizabeth I who initiated the use of the word. During her reign, Elizabeth tried to impose greater demands on her Irish neighbours. Cormac Tish McCarthy, the Lord of Blarney at the time, had no intention of submitting to her demands, and cleverly managed to evade the Queen by shrewd letters full of flattery professing his loyalty to her. On receiving yet another such letter, Elizabeth shouted out in rage, "This man never means what he says. This is all Blarney." Hence, Blarney slipped into the English language, first being defined as persuasive talk designed to deceive, but not to cause offense. Over the years, the definition has changed and now refers to flattering talk, a fine flow of eloquence with just a touch of good-humored exaggeration. It is indeed this power which is bestowed upon anyone who kisses the Blarney Stone. A more cynical Frenchman described it as gaining the privilege to tell lies for 7 years. On the border of the counties of Cork and Kerry lies the town of Bantry. Bantry was twice the object of unsuccessful French invasions, the second and more famous attempt taking place in 1796. A local Englishman, Richard White, alerted the English forces to the possible French attack. This and the storms that night prevented the attack. Richard White was rewarded for his loyalty by a peerage. His magnificent home, Bantry House, is still occupied by his descendants today. Beautifully situated, Bantry House overlooks the glassy sweep of Bantry Bay. Situated in Bantry Bay is the village of Glengarriff, a popular destination for prosperous Victorians during the late 19th century. Latterly, it has gained more fame from its proximity to Garnish Island and Bantry House. The journey to Garnish Island leads you across the sultry blue of Bantry Bay. A more placid scene can barely be imagined. In the distance, hazy mountains are piled about the bay's edge, the more prominent, conical-shaped mountain being Sugarloaf Mountain, the mountain of the wild people. As the boat makes its way across the gentle waters, birds and even goats watch you pass by. Groups of seals swim around the boat or lie gleaming on the wet rocks, lazily soaking up the sunshine. It's been said that language utterly fails to convey even a limited idea of the beauty of Garnish Island. This small island of only 37 acres is a place that anyone visiting Cork must not miss. As the boat approaches the shore, you will begin to glimpse what makes Garnish Island so special. And sure enough, should you stray through the rocks and forest on the fringes of the island, you will stumble upon a Mediterranean haven hidden among the trees. The island was originally purchased by Belfast-born MP Annan Bryce. He dreamed of turning the bare island into a paradise and enlisted the help of the architect Harold Peto to assist him. Peto favored the Italian style of garden, and as at the time wilder gardens were in favor, Garnish Island is a blend of the two. The centerpiece of the island is the lily pond, with its paved surroundings. exotic plants were imported to fill the garden. With the Mediterranean-type climate and the warm waters of the Gulf Stream, these plants still flourish today. There are rare conifers, camellias, and exotic bamboos, to name but a few. The dense splashes of color from the many different types of plants lie all around the walls of the Italian temple and buildings. It's scarcely possible to believe you're in Ireland while wandering through this subtropical paradise. Garnish Island reminds us that Ireland always has the ability to surprise. You never can tell what you will find in County Cork. A remote village, an ancient ruin, or even an Italian garden may lie just around the next corner. Yet wherever you travel in Cork, you will find a mystic history and an Irish spirit that surrounds the villages and rugged countryside of this beautiful land.